here, I have a question. Hey, shut up. Who here likes food? Okay, who here loves food? My partner in crime, my sister from another mister, Miss Carrie Brown.
In 2013, 2014, and 2015, my average medical expenses were $39,000 a year. In 2016, my total medical expenses for the whole year were $1,001. And today, we're going on that $38,000 journey. Now, I realize that if you saw Pastry Chef in the title of my talk and were hoping for a cooking demo and ice cream samples, this is probably disappointing news, and I'm sorry about that. I've always struggled with depression. I don't remember a time when it didn't cloud every aspect of my life. It was just my normal, so I didn't recognize it for what it was. It was all I'd ever known. But I grew up feeling broken, not good enough, and miserable. And according to those around me, it was all my fault. I just needed to sort myself out and start behaving. I tried very hard to understand why I felt and behaved the way I did, but I never came up with any answers. Life was up and down. Sometimes were better than others, but there was always an undercurrent of depression that I just could not get past, no matter what I did. From the age of 19, I spent countless hours over years in therapy, trying to figure it all out, trying to snap myself out of it, trying to stop myself from being such a total pain in the ass. To no avail. I learned to fake my way through life, putting on a game face when I needed, and hiding out alone with alcohol whenever I could. I eventually just accepted that I was broken and unfixable, and got through life as best I could. I was such a good faker that no one knew the pain inside. No one even knew I was depressed. Stiff upper lip and all that. One evening in March 2013, though, life went seriously sideways. I was driving home from the office late after an especially difficult couple of days. I'd just hung up from telling my therapist that I was done with the never-ending struggle and I'd given up. As I drove down the hill towards my house in the cul-de-sac, I saw a police SUV coming towards me, and I had a hunch. As he passed me, I watched in my rearview mirror and saw him flip a U-turn, and then I knew for sure that my therapist had called 911 and they were coming for me. I squealed into my garage and hit the remote control to close the door as fast as I could. I didn't expect the burly cop to leap from his car and throw himself under the door just before it closed. I hadn't slept or eaten for 2 days. I'd worked 32 hours in the previous 48, and my brain had been trying to kill me for a week. So it was no surprise that my ability to be reasonable was at this point extremely limited. Not the best frame of mind to be in when law enforcement show up uninvited and tell you that committing suicide in Washington state is illegal. It didn't take much for belligerent Carrie to show up, and things went rapidly downhill. The handcuffs were slapped on, backup were called, and paramedics were summoned. 6 cops and 2 paramedics later, I found myself handcuffed to a gurney in the back of an ambulance, racing to the ER. I laid alone, sobbing, in the ER for 9 hours. I was handcuffed to the bed, and I was under armed guard. I was in immense psychological and emotional pain, and on the very brink of losing my freedom and everything I had worked for. It was the worst night of my life. I have never felt more alone, more hopeless, or more out of control. Now, intellectually, this episode should have been a huge wake-up call. But intellect has nothing to do with it. You can't think yourself out of depression any more than you can think yourself out of diabetes or a broken leg. If you could stop being depressed just by thinking differently, believe me, I'd have stopped when I was 4, because depression sucks, and you don't have any control over it. You are completely unable to stop the crazy. I was sent off to a psychiatrist, and a few weeks later, I was diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. And there followed a merry-go-round of psychiatrists, doctors, and assortment of medications, while they tried to find something that worked to keep me stable. It was like playing pin the tail on the donkey, only it wasn't fun, and I was the donkey. 9 months after the ER incident, I became suicidal, despite the medications, and I remained so for 8 months straight. Every waking hour. During these 8 months, I somehow managed to drag my ass to work. The 24/7 psychological pain was excruciating. But there was no one else that was going to pay my bills. The work gave me something to focus on, to help drown out the incessant chatter of my brain trying to kill me. And there were people at work which took away the opportunity for me to hurt myself. The weekends were spent in a haze on the couch, binge-watching House on Netflix, which for reasons I don't understand kept my brain engaged just enough to keep me from pushing myself over the edge. This is what suicidal feels like. You're in searing emotional and psychological pain, crushing pain that you can make no sense of, because you have a great life. Pain that has no basis in fact, because there's nothing tangible causing it. There's just crushing pain for no reason. It just is. And it's relentless. And you just want the unbearable pain to stop. And nothing helps. And you have no control over it. And you just want to die. Because it seems like that's the only thing that will make the excruciating pain stop. Every single minute is a mammoth struggle just to stay alive. To resist the whispers telling you that the only way to stop it is to die. It's absolutely exhausting. Imagine being in a plane that crashes into the mid-Atlantic. You're still alive, but you're alone, bobbing in the water, surrounded by debris and dead bodies, thousands of miles from shore. Parts of you are throbbing with pain, and of course there's no food or water. You want to stay alive, so you start treading the water, despite the monumental effort it takes just to keep your head above the surface. Eventually, though, you lose your strength, and you realize it's completely hopeless. You don't want to die, but you just can't endure the pain and helplessness any longer, and there's nothing you can do about it. Or imagine yourself standing on top of a long, steep water slide, water gushing from behind you, and you know that at the bottom is a deep pool of water in which you will drown because you can't swim. But the water's coming from behind so fast that you can't step backward to safety. And suddenly, you slip, and you're rushing towards the pool at the bottom, faster and faster, unable to slow down or stop yourself because the water's too strong and the sides are too slippery, and there's nothing you can do. Even though you desperately don't want to go down into that pool and drown, you're powerless to stop it. Imagine spending every waking minute of every day wishing it was time to go to sleep so you'd get a few hours relief from the uncontrollable thoughts in your brain that you should be dead. I literally felt like I had lost my mind. My life was a swirling mass of hopelessness. Here's one example of what it was like when my brain was trying to kill me. I was out in a boat on a beautiful lake with some friends. We were having a delicious dinner in the middle of the lake. The summer sunlight was dancing on the water, and a warm breeze was gently rustling through my hair. But I wasn't able to feel any joy or emotion in this wonderful experience. I had to force myself to chat and eat, and was doing everything in my power to appear normal and happy because I didn't want to dampen my friends' joy. But all the while, my brain was whispering to me, "Go on! It would be so easy. Just lean over the side, and it will all be over before they've even realized what's happening, and you'd be free. There'd be no more pain, no more struggle. The nightmare would be over. Go on, just lean over and drag your fingers in the water. It will feel so good. And then just lean a bit further and slip over the side and feel yourself floating to the bottom before all the pain just stops." After 8 months of this, I was put on lamotrigine. 3 days later, it was as if someone had turned the lights on in my life. For 6 months, I experienced joy. Yes! The hell was over! Except it wasn't, because I became suicidal again. So they doubled the dose, and the joy returned for 6 months. And then they had to double the dose again. Oh. And then my BS meter started going off. And I decided I was not just going to let people feed me increasing amounts of drugs to shore me up for the rest of my sometimes bearable life. I was no longer prepared to accept the messaging that I was getting from the medical professionals around me. There's no cure for bipolar. You need to be on medication for the rest of your life. Just accept there's things you'll never be able to do. Learn how to make life bearable around your bipolar. Your bipolar dictates your life now. What jobs you can do, what relationships will look like, even where you can travel. Get used to it. It's really not that bad. Here was my response to that. No. No, 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 no. Oh, wrong one. So I fired everybody. I fired all the doctors, and I fired all the psychiatrists, because there was absolutely no critical thinking going on by anyone except me. No one was asking what caused my bipolar except me. Was it genetic? Was it environmental? Was it dietary? Was it psychological? Was it the way my parents treated me when I was growing up? Or was it any combination of the above? I mused that if I could just figure out what caused it, I might have a chance at fixing it. And there ain't nothing like thinking big. I figured I'd start with genetics, mostly because I grew up with a manic depressive father, so it made sense to me that there might be a genetic connection. So I sent a vial of spit off, and 6 weeks later got a file containing my DNA report. And bingo. It was there in black and white. M, T, H, F, R. This is a genetic mutation that can cause all sorts of mayhem. One thing is a reduced ability to methylate. Why does this matter? Because our bodies cannot use B vitamins unless we methylate them first. And what do B vitamins do? One of the biggest functions that B vitamins have is neurotransmitter health. So I had had a severe lifelong deficiency of B vitamins, which blood tests corroborated. My neurotransmitters had never been able to function properly. I discovered that I have an intolerance to gluten, although I am not celiac, and that my serotonin and dopamine pathways were broken in about 40 different places. Serotonin and dopamine are responsible for mood balance. I also do not have the ability to clear toxins, such as gluten in my case, effectively. Add all those things up, and it was really no surprise that depression had plagued me for my whole life. And a breakdown in some form was pretty much bound to happen at some point. Bipolar, come on down. Armed with this info and a slew of food intolerance and blood test results, I engaged the help of Dr. Karen Ball to help me further interpret my DNA and figure out a plan for healing my many other ailments, which included psoriasis, migraines, constant ear infections, fatigue, IBS, and eczema. All the things that the medical professionals in my life had never been able to fix, and were things that I had battled, along with my depression, my whole life. Around the same time that this was happening, a doctor started following me on Twitter. And whenever a doctor follows me, I am always curious. Some of you may know of Dr. Ted Naiman. We struck up a conversation, and he said that he thought he could help me with my bipolar. I was all ears. I had already been eating grain and sugar-free, higher protein, moderate starchy carbs, and moderate healthy fat for 3.5 years at this point, but it clearly hadn't made a positive impact on my bipolar. Ted immediately put me on a ketogenic diet. His thinking was that ketogenic diets were used very successfully for the treatment of seizures in children. And since lamotrigine is an anti-seizure medication, it made sense that my bipolar may respond well to a similar diet. So very low carb, high fat it was. I switched to a ketogenic diet in mid-July 2015. I started Dr. Bull's food elimination protocol and supplementation plan in 6 weeks later, on September 1st, 2015. 6 weeks after that, under Ted's watchful eye, I reduced my lamotrigine to 0 over the course of a week. That was almost 2 years ago. And I have had 0 symptoms of bipolar ever since. I have been completely unmedicated for 2 years. And boy howdy, have I tried to make myself depressed. Because I'm one of those people that I just wanted to make sure, and it was almost unbelievable to me. I mean, I couldn't believe it was true. So I tried to make myself depressed, and I couldn't. Because my brain just does not work that way anymore. It just doesn't. After a lifetime of being labeled and judged for something I couldn't control, I had finally discovered that I wasn't crazy. It wasn't me. I wasn't to blame. And that changed everything. And all it took to save my life, as well as $38,000 a year on medications, psychiatrists, psychotherapists, and hospitalizations for migraines, was some supplements, a change in diet, and a case or two of Kerrygold butter. Or, as you like to say in America, butter. My life went from this to this. From black and white to full-on Technicolor. Two years ago, all I wanted to do was die. Now, I am literally living my dream. There's more. These feet have been all over. The biggest part of that dream I'm living is being able to help as many possible as I can escape the demon that is depression in all its various manifestations through a ketogenic diet. I apply my professional pastry chefing skills to creating easy and delicious keto food, because most people will not find it possible to stick to a ketogenic diet if the food is difficult or time-consuming to prepare, or if it tastes blah. So I work tirelessly now to prove that keto can taste better than the regular food you've eaten all your life, while at the same time healing a myriad of health issues and helping you on your path to wellness. Because it turns out that life doesn't have to suck. Mental health issues do not have to rule your life. There is hope. Depression is not your fault. You are not broken. And you can change your life into whatever you want it to be. Stop now. There's nobody there. Can I run off now?
You are an extraordinary storyteller. Thank you for sharing your story with us. One thing that struck me during your story is you said there was an 8-month period where every day you just wanted to die, but you kept going. Why did you keep going? Why didn't you go home and just take care of it?
I don't know. There wasn't that much. I was just existing. I don't know. Because I have no family. So, you know, up Wade's side was, I mean, there's nobody. I live in this little bubble with a bunch of cats. And I don't have 7, so I am not the crazy cat lady. Okay? I honestly don't know, because when I wasn't asleep and when I wasn't at work, my brain was constantly giving me this, like, just end it, just end it. I just kept getting up and doing the things and hoping that I made it to bed that night.
We're so thankful that you didn't.
Thank you.
I know this will be N equals 1, but can you share some of the supplements?
Can you speak up?
Some of the supplements that you use?
So for me, the big ones were the methylated B vitamins. So I take Thorn Research, Methyl Guard Plus, and Basic Bs. So they come you know, because I can't do it, so I have to have them in a pre-methylated form. But, you know, just to give you an idea, that's $30 a month. I'm going to have to take them every day for the rest of my life, but my lamotrigine was $1,500 a month, so I'm okay with that. So Thorn Research, Methyl Guard Plus, and Basic Bs. However, I have to say, everybody's different, and you actually have to titrate up. So you start off low, because if your brain's never had any and suddenly you have this influx of awesome B vitamins, it does some really weird things. Like I've never dreamt. I had no idea that not dreaming was a thing, but it is. And I spent my whole life never dreaming. And I took some methylated B vitamins, and it was like I would wake up in the morning and I would well, I've been doing all this stuff all night. I haven't been to sleep yet because my dreams were I mean, I was fighting wars and I was just doing all this stuff, and I woke up and I was like, man, I'm exhausted. But you have to titrate up. You can't, you know, and I would highly recommend you don't, if this feels, you know, like you relate to this, don't just go out and buy Bs. Do it with someone who understands it, because my dose would be different to your dose, and you have to titrate up, and then you kind of go a little bit too far, and then you go, ooh, that's not right, and then you go back down until you find your personal sweet spot. So I wouldn't encourage you to just go out and get some and start taking them without help.
Good morning, Carrie.
Hi.
I'm a clinical social worker and psychotherapist, and I came to KETO Con believing that it might be my long-term mission to bring keto to my clients and patients, and now I know it is, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there a specific company that you were recommended, or did you just pick a company over the counter for your genetic testing? For your DNA test?
23andMe.
Awesome, thank you.
However, you do, when you get your 23andMe file, it's kind of like gobbledygook. It's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? So there's a bunch of online websites where you actually, some of them cost, $5. I think one costs 30, but most of them are free. You actually shovel your data, your genome file through them, and they give you a much more consumer-friendly, readable report that you can actually make sense of, and or find a doctor who can help you figure out what your DNA file is actually saying.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for your story. This is the reason I come to these kind of conferences. It's very motivating and inspirational. What I'm wanting to know is I have several people in my life, both personally and professionally, that need to hear your story. Have you written a book of your story? Where can they also access your story?
And of course my story was that was a lot to put in 20 minutes. So there's actually the story of my recovery, i.e. when I started keto and when I started doing the DNA, is in a long series of posts on my blog, which is carriebrown.com. And if you look for the tag WTF is wrong with me, it will pull up all the posts that are related to my journey, if that's helpful. I haven't written a book yet. A million people have asked me to. Maybe now's the time.
I think that people who have these kinds of problems, whether it's whatever the issues are that we know keto is good for, they cannot believe that just simply diet could really change their life. And when you tell them, they don't believe you. But if they have someone like you, that they can see that.
There was one incident. I ran out of lamotrigine. This was 6 months before I started calling bullshit. I inadvertently ran out, and I'm not a running out of anything type of person, so it was really odd. But Saturday morning, and I realized I didn't have enough to last me till Monday, and I also had no repeats left on my prescription, so I actually had to speak to my doctor. And so I went down to a half dose Saturday, Sunday. By Monday lunchtime, I was suicidal. So that was how fast my brain would go sideways when I wasn't on the lamotrigine. So for me, still, the week where Dr. Naiman said, okay, just come off the lamotrigine, and I was terrified because, of course, last time that happened, it was not good, and I nearly died. But he said to me, okay, we'll do it over a week. It is miraculous to me that in the last 2 years, I have had 0 symptoms of bipolar, and I'm completely unmedicated.
I have a question. I hope you don't think it's silly, but I really, really enjoy the Keto Evangelist Kitchen podcast.
Yay! We have a listener.
And I'm just curious, how did you and Brian get hooked up for that?
Brian sent me an email a year ago. Actually, it was. I'm going to have it tattooed somewhere because I never want to forget. July 22nd, 2016. I had a random email from some dude called Brian Williamson who said he was powered by ketones, and I have no idea how he found me or why in the world he thought I would be interesting, but he invited me to come on his podcast, the Keto Evangelist podcast, and because you can tell my brain is, and so my mouth is going, yes, and my brain is going, shut up. And so anyway, so I said yes, and he interviewed me on the Keto Evangelist podcast, and we talked about ice cream. And then that was all good, and he got some feedback, and 2 weeks later he emailed me and said, hey, let's talk about some stuff. And I'm like, my brain's, no, yes! So, yes! And so he said, hey, how do you want to do a podcast, a thing, and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yes, and my brain's, no, yes, no, yes, no. Anyway, the yes won, and here we are.
Let's do a 5 to 10 minute segment at the end of the podcast that I'm already doing. And Carrie can't count time. So that 5 to 10 minute segment always was like an hour long. And after about 9 months of that,
9 months.
I said, we might as well just do our own podcast. And she was like, finally.
You're a fibber.
I'm so glad you did. I love it.
Thank you. All right, so.
Am I done?
Yes.
Okay.